What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 443. My name is Steve, one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
You know, hostility is like psychic boomerang. And I'm John.
And that's John right there. Or hostile boomerang. Good to see you guys. Welcome to a new episode again. We are going to be talking today, Ronald, you picked Howard the Duck as the required viewing, right? So we're going to get into that in a second and go through, I don't know, I guess some movies that some of us have seen, some topics that maybe are timely, and maybe talk about an actor who is having a moment right now on television.
Yes.
And just kind of round it out with anything else we feel like talking about. But Ronald, why don't you just go right in and talk about required viewing? Tell us, why you went back to the Duck, why you went back to the Bond.
Yeah, I chose Howard the Duck because it just had been a while since I'd seen it. It is a part of the MCU proper in some way, the character at least. And I've always wanted to revisit this as an adult. So I remember it being really nuts even as a kid, and then watching it as an adult. This movie was insane. It was really insane. I'm glad I watched it. It just felt like a cultural moment. I know that it's a bomb and everything, but I know a lot of people that value this movie. This is like a special one for people.
It's a bomb or the bomb?
The bomb. With that bombed in the box office as well.
I don't know, like when you brought it up last week, it's the kind of thing like when you hear a title and you're like, yes, probably what the feelings are about it. What you're getting at, like was not a big success critically, commercially, right, anything like that. But like you hear a title, like especially for the time in my childhood, when I saw that movie, and like immediately I just like kind of smile a little bit, like I don't hold the same. It's one of those things where like when you first see it, it allows me to like remember that experience.
Right.
And I'm like, sure, I'm not watching this movie, reviewing it or critiquing it as much as just like, oh yeah, like my younger self, I can see probably why, at that point in time, a movie about a rock and roll duck from outer space and, Leah Thompson and Tim Robbins, like this was cool, or this was fun to me, as a kid. And yes, when you said it, it was like, oh yeah, this was like a smile, you get that, like, I got like a positive feeling, even though it's probably not a good movie, it's a fun movie to me. And it means like a positive experience to me. And I'm rewatching it, honestly, like for all the criticism you can say about it or, whether it's good or bad, like I gotta say, I still came away kind of feeling the same way about it. It's just like, it's cemented in my feelings, about it.
Same. What about you, John? How'd you feel about it?
John's going through his reel back there.
I'm trying to find a screenshot that frames up nice.
Well, that one, if you get kind of go center, you look like you belong on the dollar bill.
No, I know. I already do. I already look like a duck, George Washington. Several people have said that to me. Let's see. I think I have one that's framed nicely where I can be to one side and I can just be done with it.
That sounds like something you'd hear like one of your students say, "Boy, you look like a duck, George Washington."
It does seem like one of those insults that like someone like a young person would give you, and you'd be like, "Well, man, that's brutal." So okay, I went the wrong way. There we go. There's my friends. I kind of share your feelings, Steve, in a way, in the sense that for me, this was a movie that feels like a slice of time or a slice of childhood or something. Right. And therefore and I'm not saying like therefore it can't be judged at all. I'm just saying that the only reason to watch a movie like this is to sort of deal with the reality of a movie like this rather than to like I don't have this memory of it being this awe-inspiring classic that I loved. I have a memory of it being I think I said this last time, like a movie that I went to go see and kind of made myself love because it was so rare for like a George Lucas movie that has all these special effects and it's based on a comic book and it's got a silly kind of sci-fi tone and it's a little creepy and weird and it's very much, I mean, we're kind of kidding calling this an MCU movie. It's part of Howard the Duck is a Marvel Comics character, This movie obviously is not part of the MCU, but tonally, it reminds me how much like the William Huyck, Gloria Katz screenplay for this. They also wrote Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It reminds me that tone is kind of the Marvel tone. Like, there was like the Indiana Jones movies are kind of comedies in a way. They have a lot of moments that are punctuated with humor. This style of movie has a lot of moments that punctuate it with humor. I think that's the trait of the Marvel movies that a lot of people find really refreshing, but also some people find kind of tiresome. So it is interesting how much, if this was just a slightly different tone of movie, it could have felt like, one of the MCU characters that we know could have popped in on this. I mean, granted, this movie's very dated in a way, but there's also a lot of charm to the way that it's shot. I think something shot on film with practical effects and kind of every trick in the Industrial Light and Magic toolbox that they had at that point. I guess you don't have tricks in a toolbox. You have tricks in like a magic hat? Every trick from the ILM magic hat. You have tools in a toolbox. No, it's, you've got like the kind of on-cell hand-drawn animation of some of the, like when the eyes are blasting rays or when the guy's blasting rays, that looks like very hand-drawn animation. And then you've got like stop-motion puppetry and you've got makeup effects. I really wonder how many different makeups did they have to put Jeffrey Jones in. His transformation goes through like 20 different phases. I'd be really curious to know how many different procedures they invented for that. It's got a little bit of gross out. It's kind of gross and horny for a PG movie. Yeah.
Loose duck condoms.
Yes, PG movie.
No package.
Loose duck condoms.
They've been used.
Right. There's a lot to say about that. But no, as far as the tone of it, like I was watching this feeling kind of the joy at like, oh my God, this is so weird. I watched another movie that I'll talk about this week that would have been much more interesting if it was kind of bad or campy. And I think Howard the Duck has the interest level of something where if you like it, then you're digging on all the different things I've just mentioned. If you don't, then you probably are going, oh, this is so corny, or this is so cheesy, or this is so silly. But this movie has such a what the fuck is this movie kind of quality to it that it's interesting to watch. It maybe drags on a little bit. I think it's kind of interesting that the different vignettes in the movie, like Howard and Beverly and Dr. Jennings go to a little diner and they have an altercation with the people at the diner. And that's like a vignette. It's like a set piece that kind of draws out. Tim Robbins' character and Howard get on an ultralight and they fly, and that is not just like a quick flight. There's a whole 20-minute sequence given to them on that ultraflight in different permutations.
Yeah.
Those are very much like episodes that would have been in a Howard the Duck comic book story, where you might have an issue that was a self-contained little story, and it would have been like, oh, Howard and Beverly at a redneck bar, and it would have been similar to that. And I think it's interesting that the movie apes that tone and little episodic scenes like that, but I think it does drag on, and I think by the time it gets to the end, again, this movie is an hour and 50 minutes and feels like it could easily have been a 95 minute movie and been more of an enjoyable watch. But as far as just what it is, I think it's hard for me not to see it through that filter of this is the kind of thing that I loved when I was the age I was when this came out, which I had just turned 13. And I was a kind of a young 13 in some ways. I was still really into, as I am now, into kind of fantasy stuff and comics, and I loved talking animal stuff. Rocket Raccoon was one of my favorite comic book characters. I hunted down Howard the Duck comics for a long time too in the 80s, just because it was like I liked the idea of a little duck who smoked a cigar, and in the comics he's more acerbic, and the comics were much more of like a satire of regular stories. Like the characters would be like almost a satire of superheroes or a satire of horror. So it's a different tone for the movie, but when I got to the end of this movie, I had fully updated myself on it though, and I began to just feel this. What I really felt was so sorry for my mom and my dad, because I remember going to see this once with him and once with her, and like one of those things where I came home and wouldn't shut up about it and made someone take me back to see it a second time, and I can't imagine how that must have felt for to be an adult and be forced to watch this movie once, let alone to hear about how great it was and have every scene described to you and then go see it again. And I think, again, I was feeling that sense of like, this movie isn't quite what I wanted it to be, but I still was swept away by, everything I just said, the effects, the tone. So it's such an artifact. It is really hard for me to assess it. I don't think it's a great movie, but I do think it's a great artifact.
I get that. I do. I really do.
I also think human eyes in animal faces are unsettling. Howard the Duck has a weird looking face. He needs to have like cartoony eyes or animal eyes or something. It was very weird. He doesn't look like a duck or a man. He's like a mutant duck man.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this is the thing, man. I understand the duck world where he comes from or duck land or whatever. It's supposed to be similar to planet Earth. But the fact that like he gets everything and he's grabbing these very specifically American phrases is so fucking weird. Like there's no point where he's like maybe somebody says something he's like, what? Because I don't know that person here. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I don't know that person on my planet. So he's like, I don't know. He's so chock full of catchphrases. It's a little like I don't remember that when I was younger. I don't remember him being like, "Oh boy, that's a kick in the pants." Oh boy, it's like that every couple seconds he has like a thing he says like that.
You messed with the wrong duck or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I thought his voice was kind of interesting because it is kind of like a boring voice, but it also is a little bit like a little New York guy, but he's like a little nasal. I mean, it was an interesting thing that he wasn't a more interesting voice. Like you almost expect him to be more of a cartoony voice or something, but they made him kind of like just a guy who talks like this. It's just a little bit interesting. He kept saying it to me like, what if someone said to Steve Buscemi, like, be as boring as you can? And then that's the voice Steve Buscemi would use.
Steve Buscemi, talk while you're laying down.
Talk while you're laying down and try not to have an accent. Well, Robin Williams started recording parts for this and then dropped out.
Right.
That's crazy.
I think he felt restricted by the process of trying to match what the duck bill could do. Like, I think he wanted to just go off, and they had lines they needed him to say because of the movements of the puppet or the animatronic, you know. No, I mean it's such an interesting thing. I mean, I love like the fact that he smokes a cigar, the fact that we do see duck titties in this, the fact that that like there's like a ogling Leah Thompson in panties scene in this, the fact that there's like references to there's a picture of him as a we don't know what he's doing, whether he's smoking it, but we know that he's growing weed in one of his pictures that we see in Howard the Duck's apartment at the beginning. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that for a movie that is putatively kind of aimed at kids, this movie does seem like it was trying to confound that line between kiddie and adult. Did you have a sense of that when you were young, Steve, that this was like a little bit raunchy?
I think so. I feel like I did. I mean, I was pretty young when I watched it, so I don't know that I really had the perspective, but I mean, I had definitely rewatched it, you know, as I got old, you know, in my teens or whatever through the years. And I think at that point it kind of registered more for me, like what was actually going on in some of the scenes that probably went over my head as a kid. But yeah, some of the blanks got filled in, and you know, I would say like in my teens, like that makes more sense. I didn't really know what was going on there, but now I do, and it seems maybe a little inappropriate. But you know, whatever. It was the '80s.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you kind of like that though? I mean, I don't know. I
kind of do. Yeah.
I guess you wouldn't want to be like with your kid and be surprised by content that's going to be like a whole new topic for them, like because kids are pretty savvy now, you know. If you were watching something with one of your kids and it had like raunchy content in it, it might go over their heads or it might not, and you might go, I wonder why they put that joke in there. But I do generally like things being a little bit less starkly drawn, and especially for a character like this, it does give the character a little bit of that edge that I think he had in the earlier comic stories where he's kind of an acerbic prick. It makes it so that even though they niced him up as a character, they kept the idea of what he was doing in the world intact. And what's interesting too is I think that like Tim Robbins and Leah Thompson and Jeffrey Jones are all doing very silly things that feel very like it's like they got the assignment of the tone of like almost look like a comic book drawing, like their facial expressions and their poses and stuff. And so, and in some ways it was kind of cringy and you're like, man, they're really going for it. But in other ways it's very, I I don't know. It's like there is definitely a way of approaching a comic book tone that this movie's trying to take that is heightened. And I feel like it's cool to. I mean, like Tim Robbins doesn't have any kind of on-screen persona yet. Nobody knows who he is. This is just him showing up, and he's really embracing like he's playing a nerd, and he's really playing like a goofy nerd. And I think Leah Thompson. I mean, I don't know what launched 1,000 crushes on her. Probably Back to the Future more than this, but this was definitely not. This was definitely not a problem in terms of her being one of those faces of the '80s that you just swoon over. So
why does every like '80s movie have like a ravenous rapist? Like, it's like it's
Which character are you talking about?
Let's start with one.
The sleazoid manager, is that the guy you're talking about?
When the two guys tried to like assault her.
The guys who were in the shot that I just the glam punk clown street gang, whatever.
They were gonna assault her right outside, and then like Howard was like, trying to figure it out the situation because it just was even weird for him. You know what I mean? He's like, what the fuck is going on? Like these guys are trying to assault a woman just out in the open. Like it just felt very. So he interfered, kicked some ass, did duck foo.
Quack foo.
The best foo there is.
Yeah, the best.
I was going to ask you guys which foo I was going to try to find all the different foos over the years and see which ones compare to quack foo. The ones I thought of though were when I was a kid, an impolite term for anal sex was boo-foo. And also,
never heard of that.
Also, Shaq foo. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Isn't that associated with Shaquille O'Neal? Okay.
Yeah, and then Shaq used to rap with this group called the Fooshnickens.
Okay.
Obviously. I mean, we had to
as one does, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, the quack foo. You mentioned it, Ronald. Like, do you want to analyze the technique? I think you might be more of a martial arts guy than me. I mean, would you say this movie is the biggest example of quack foo, or are there other examples?
I mean, I've seen pieces of it in things such as John Wick 1. I saw some duck foo.
John Duck 1. I'm trying to think of what would the name of it.
Yeah, it's when you use a little swinging technique when you like swing around things to kick and kind of like parkour style. It's an object based too. It seems to be you kind of pivot off of something or parkour off of something and then kick somebody. That seems to be the base of quack foo. Yeah.
Well, he got him good. He got those weird glam punks. He really got them. I think in the 80s, that's another thing you had to have. You had to have that type of like punks that come out that are weird cartoon characters, like something out of Rocky Horror. And you also have to have, I mean, if you're going to be in a diner, there's got to be yokels, and one guy's got to be wearing a vest and a baseball hat. That's just it's got to happen. And I also think you got to yell a lot. And if possible, scream a lot. Like have entire action scenes that are just based on people going in some kind of vehicle. And then I think the other main thing you got to do in an 80s caper is, if possible, at the end you have to have them sing a song for a packed crowd that somehow has something to do with the events of the movie, or is about the character from the movie, or is a song the character wrote in the movie or something. You've got to have that moment. I've just got to say that last scene, it's a good thing that they had a little guitar ready, and that Howard the Duck knew how to play the song on guitar, because otherwise that could have been a total disaster.
Is he supposed to be like, I was trying to figure out, is he supposed to be like a Morris Day Duck sort of character?
A Morris Duck, if you will?
Morris Duck, just very like, let's get. It's like
no, the song is Thomas Dolby, who did the song, was a guy who had like his own pop sound.
Yeah,
that song that's definitely like the era of like Princey keyboard, like pop funk, and this is the white guy version of that. Thomas Dolby is cool, but he's not as cool as Prince. So.
Yeah, just like Morris Day, Prince, sort of. Yeah,
Howard the Duck. There's a good chance I had that soundtrack album.
Oh, I have it.
You have it?
Okay.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
in a box in my parents' house somewhere. 100% I had that soundtrack. And Cherry Bomb, that's the group Cherry Bomb, right?
Right. It has the songs that's performed by them. I didn't know. Yeah.
I love it.
No, they were all hot. And I always thought it was
Holly
cool.
Robinson.
I always thought it was cool that Phil, the nerd, like hangs out with this cool band. Like, if Howard the Duck hadn't been around, he was still part of their scene. You know what I mean? He was still like coming over. I also like that he was kind of being a lech. Talk about like people being lecherous in this movie when he shows up and says he missed the show, but he showed up in time to watch him undress. That's the kind of line you wouldn't have a guy say now. Oh, how charming he is! What a charming lech. But I think that kind of threat of the sexual content that you were talking about. Like, there's that threat later in the movie too. Even with the creepy alien thing, he seems to like he kind of fondles Leah Thompson's thigh, and also the vaguely bondage inflected way that she gets tied up, and it's just like. Because she's the woman and she's prisoner, they just have to tie her up, and it has to be like an elaborate, rope pattern. It is kind of funny how much a movie that seems to not be setting her up to be just a damsel, when it's time to have danger, she just totally becomes the damsel in distress. Which that's not great, but it's very of its time.
All right, it's my pick now, right?
Yeah. Unless there's anything else anyone needs to say about the career of Howard the Duck, like the size of his condom, the amount of money he had in his wallet, whether Jeffrey Jones, whether retroactively he's canceled.
Oh yeah. I feel like we could time travel and cancel the shit out of him because he's a pedophile, right? He's a pedophile.
Let's just say the short answer to that seems to be yes. If there is any nuance to it, I think we need to proceed from the assumption that because he was discovered to have a large collection of pornographic materials involving children, the supposedly vintage status of this collection, it doesn't seem to me to change the other aspect of it. So let's say he was and is a very bad man.
Yeah. A pedophile.
A pedo.
Yeah. That's
I wanted to mention something before we start. I knew I had something else about Howard the Duck. Ronald.
Yes.
A black duck. And I think he may have even been holding a boombox or something in Duck World.
Yeah.
Does that mean now it means all the other ducks are white? Like, do you know what I mean? If before it would have just been, they're all just ducks. But then when you have one black duck downtown,
with a boombox, it's like,
like, okay, well now that means all the other ducks are white. I just think that's interesting. It's like Lego figures were all yellow, and then when they put it like a black one in, it's like, wait a minute, now you've just basically made it clear that you thought all the other ones were white. Anyway.
When they showed that black duck, it felt like when The Rock said the whole state of the AC universe has changed. That changed my whole perception of this whole world. I was like,
the whole status of Duck World has changed.
The status of Duck World has changed. Watch out.
Is it a little bit of a thing where, like, when we tried to then like think of Howard as sort of a disenfranchised person in our world because he's a duck, were you like, it's hard to really think of him that way because he's got white duck privilege?
He definitely has white duck privilege. and then you never know, man. He may have some conservative opinions. He may want to get rid of critical black duck theory. It's like he may want to get rid of that too.
I just want to say a lot of guys who seemed cool in the 80s turned out to be pretty bad. So,
what happened to Duck as a Trumper now?
The thing is, they started off just like, free speech or like, maybe libertarian in nature. And it's like it took an ugly turn once the Tea Party came along. That's a longer discussion. But the reactionary ducks, we will have to get into that at greater depth
for sure
on a future episode. All right, anyway. Steve.
Yes.
Now you're up.
I'm very excited because this is one that I've overlooked like 3 times now because I don't know the right time. But there's never a wrong time for a movie I just wanted to see for a long time.
Okay.
And there's a movie called They Look Like People. Have either of you seen this film?
No.
I haven't.
Perfect. Do either of you know what it is or have heard of it?
No, but I love that name.
Perfect. Yeah, me too.
That's such a good name.
This is a movie. It's like a psychological horror drama.
Okay.
From 2015. It's like a clean 80 minutes, deep, like an indie film. Created, wrote, directed, produced by Perry Blackshear, which I'm not sure if he's done anything since this, but it was it won a jury award at Slam Dance the year it came out. But I've seen the name of this film many times over like horror movies you've never heard of, like great horror movies you never heard of, little hidden gems, like little indies that you've never that's never crossed your eyes. The poster is awesome. The idea of the movie sounds really interesting to me. And even better, this is on Freevee, Pluto TV, the Roku channel, and Tubi. All the free ones. So you guys should be able to find this movie and watch this movie with us. But the log line is, suspecting that people around him are turning into evil creatures, a troubled man questions whether to protect his only friend from an imaginary war or possibly from himself. But it's supposed to be really great, and honestly what put it on my watch list, like solidified it towards the top of it, was I think it was last year. Oh no, this was during the pandemic, early pandemic times. Mike Flanagan had it on a list that he posted about, like, literally what I just said, like overlooked horror gems, little indie movies you may never have heard of. And like on that list, he had movies like Lake Mungo. He had movies like Creep, Taking a Deborah Logan, Invitation, movies that I love, right? So the fact that it was in this conversation and it's from Mike Flanagan, that just was like, okay, I need to eventually see that. And here I am 5 years later, finally, hopefully excited to watch it with you guys. So my pick for next week, or the next episode, is going to be called They Look Like People. Again, it's from 2015. It's a quick watch, 80 minutes. And again, it is on Freevee, Pluto, Roku channel, and Tubi. If you want to check it out, that'll be next episode.
They look like people.
Yeah,
I love that name, man.
Me too. It's always registered with me. Like, what an awesome title for a movie. And yeah, check out the poster. It's really a great poster too. But it just always gets buried in everything as I talk about watching, and it's just like, now's the time. Now is the time.
Do you think they spend any time in Duck World in this movie?
Unlikely, but I don't know. Anything's possible.
It's probably a good thing, Steve.
Yeah.
Duck World wasn't that cool.
Duck World. Ooh.
Duck tits. Woo.
All right. What else we have here, guys? What else? I think, well, Ronald, most recently you went and saw a movie.
Yeah, you saw a movie in the theater.
Literally just before recording this episode.
You got there so early. You were the first one there.
I was the first one there, and then only.
You also got there so late. You were the last one there.
Yeah. Four people showed up. Showed up after me.
Okay.
Phew. So yeah, I saw Magazine Dreams, a movie that's been stifled by controversy.
Right.
Yeah, it feels like this has been like the last 2 years have been like the time where a star has greatly affected a feature in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
This one through the controversies with Jonathan Majors and his girlfriend, and the assault that took place. And I was conflicted about seeing this. I honestly didn't really even want to talk about it, but I'm glad I'm talking about it because all right, so I guess what I'm gonna have to do to the best of my ability is just talk about the movie and his performance, and that's not without some like conflict in my head. I don't believe in the abuse of women on any level. I don't condone it on any level. But I do think that if somebody commits a crime and they're punished for it, that there should be some level of redemption. I feel like as a person who's had people in the system, the whole point of jail time, the whole point of punishment, the whole point of smudges on your record are reform on some level. And, I'm hoping that he is reformed. But it still will give me pause whenever something comes up that is a Jonathan Majors thing, which was kind of why I was conflicted about seeing this. So I just wanted to lead with that.
Okay.
The only thing I would add to that, Ronald, that you said is that, like, I agree with that, and I also find that, like, maybe I would choose not to see it or not to support a movie for some reason like that. But I know that on some level I'm being a hypocrite because I know there are people who've had allegations and stories that have come out that haven't sunk their careers, that have continued to make movies. Like, just if we're going to talk about Jonathan Majors being fired from the MCU, Josh Brolin is someone who has had some. Like, look it up, folks. And he obviously did not get fired. And I mean, again, I'm not saying anything to be whataboutism or both sidesy about the issue. I'm just saying if we're talking about the effect that these types of things have on people's careers,
for sure.
There's almost no accounting for it, and there's no way to believe that. Oh, we did it. We took care of it, folks. The problem's taken care of. Because obviously these types of assholes are everywhere. And I think sometimes on this show we choose to grapple with the art that's made by problematic people, and other times we don't. We don't feel obligated to do it, but sometimes we do. And so, I think it's worth mentioning that those thoughts are there. But yes, you went to go see a movie, not a story about Jonathan Majors' life. So
right, for sure. This is an incredible performance. I mean, so to kind of figure out what this character is to kind of, he's dealing with an immense amount of trauma. He's lost both of his parents. It unfolds how that happens. The story unfolds about that as the story continues. Mm-hmm. And he is in this like real web of trauma. He can't get out of it, and he's socially awkward. You kind of feel like there's some arrested development. He may even be on the spectrum. His conversations are really awkward. He's kind of unfortunately isolated himself because of his behaviors. Nobody really wants to be around him, which also creates a level of depression that leaves him further away from social interaction. So he's like, doesn't have any friends. His only person that he talks to on a pretty regular basis is his father, but he's obsessed with fitness. And he does get obsessed with a weightlifting figure that he kind of is corresponding with one-sided letters. Think Stan. Think Stan. Think one-sided letters to a person throughout the movie, it kind of weaving throughout this narrative.
Wow.
So as he's going on, he's having these letters to one of his weightlifting heroes, and he's also trying to become the best that he is, but he's also really small in comparison to people that are juicing
in that world.
And he's juicing, so he's like he could be a lot bigger, but he's still he's pretty small considering.
Right.
And he's had a couple devastating performances that have kind of defined what he is in his head in terms of who he is as in that field. And it's really about him struggling to kind of be this person. He wants to be a magazine, the cover of a magazine. He wants to be that weightlifter that you see on Muscle Builder or any of those magazines. He wants to be on the cover. Fitness, any of those magazines, and he's really striving. But because he's had this trauma, it's almost a real uncompromised dedication to it. in a way that I've never really seen anybody obsessed with something on screen, really. So it's really a lot of him interacting with people and having awful interactions. That's really what it is. And him kind of raging out in between those times. So that's hard to process, to be completely honest with you. But it's a beautiful
because of how it mirrors what we might be thinking
yes.
about.
Yes. No,
it's interesting.
One of the things that's really, really hard is seeing someone flounder socially. And, I kind of think about, I was kind of triggered. When I was younger, I had really crooked teeth. I had some rough interactions when I was in like middle school. High school kind of changed because I got braces and stuff. But, I didn't have the best clothes. I didn't have the best stuff. And then also on top of that, like you start to just become really internal rather than trying to reach out. And there's a lot of that internal monologue with this guy. He's just really in his own head about everything. Even though he is, like you can see, he's an action figure. Like he is clearly, and he's attractive to somebody. So it's like a character study. It is a real character study. What Jonathan Majors is doing in this movie is out of this world. And even taking a movie like Last Black Man in San Francisco, where he plays a character that is also maybe on the spectrum, maybe having some social issues. That's another thing than what he's doing in Magazine Dreams, which speaks to maybe the range that I thought, I knew that he had, but seeing it kind of play out is pretty amazing. There are some triggering scenes that go beyond the abuse that I don't really want to talk about. Maybe you have to watch it to see it, but there's his rage pushes him to consider some things that I wasn't sure this movie was going to go into. Some of it is like mass shootings. If I can, there's a point where he considers killing a bunch of people and really goes pretty far. Yeah. Honestly, that stuff is dark as fuck. Like it gets, especially with everything going on lately with the school shootings and stuff, that can be very triggering. But it's a good movie. It really has an ending that feels hopeful and beautiful in a way. Like I think that there's a version of this movie that could have taken this man's life and just had it kind of end like Queen and Slim, just kind of like go out with a bang. And this doesn't do that. It really gives you an opportunity to make your own judgment on who he is as a person without him laying flat on the ground with his brains blown out. And that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing. Because I think that there are versions of people with his trajectory that change their lives in a way that maybe this character may have the potential to. Mm-hmm. Overall, like this is like one of my favorite movies of this year.
Wow.
It's but again, I'm conflicted because it's all this shit with it, all this muck in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I want to forgive him, but I it's hard. It's hard when it's hard.
It's complicated. It's just complicated, and it's it's not complicated in the sense of condemning his actions and saying, okay, you can make some statements about him based on those actions. But as far as what that means about someone's work and, like you said, their ability to be useful beyond their, paying the price for what they've done is a question. I think that we culturally we always have that. Like I think we've talked about it before, though. I think I'm of a mind that you are, that like if somebody faces some kind of consequence and they go through the process of that, then it's like that's what the system is supposed to be.
That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah. I don't want somebody bringing it up every time. If somebody's like a serial whatever.
I mean, I don't
different.
know that we can like rate like the severity of the crime, but I know what you're saying, that like there's things that you could believe someone maybe could learn from. It doesn't mean that they need to then be exalted or they deserve a career.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that's interesting, or that on a human level, is to think of like, well, what would you do then if you were on some redemption trail and now you couldn't do the thing that you were spent, maybe that's the price, is that now you don't have the avenue of this thing that you worked your life to set up. Now you can't do that anymore. But we at the time when the news about him broke the first time, we had just finished talking about how great he was in Creed 3 and how much we liked him as Kang. I mean, these are very different types of roles, and it's like, so the fact that he's good in this doesn't surprise me. It doesn't, it's still kind of like hearing that new Mel Gibson movie is not bad. It's like there's this thing of like, that ship has sailed as far as being able to have uncomplicated feelings about that person's work. But anywho, so you're saying good movie, but you're not necessarily recommending it for all the reasons we just talked about.
Go ahead and watch it if you can manage this seesaw of emotions that I had while watching this movie. It's heavy, man.
If you didn't want to scream at us as we equivocated and rambled through our thoughts on this matter, then maybe it's the movie for you. But if anyone was like listening to us in the last 10 minutes going, why are these guys talking about this movie? Then probably this question. I mean, I know people for whom this kind of question is an easy question. He's an abuser. I'm done. I don't want to support what he does. And I understand that. But I think on this show, we've made the choice to check out a lot of things just because we're curious about the art.
For sure.
Anyway,
for sure.
I think we will continue to wrestle with it and continue to feel, like you said, Ronald. I can tell you feel a little funny about it.
Yeah, man, for sure. And I guess somebody could look at me and be like, "Why'd you pay money for the ticket?" And I'll say,
"But you did a thing." There it is.
Yeah. Damn it. I'll say
a lot of people worked on the movie. Let's just put it that way. That's another important thing to remember about all these individuals, is that a lot of other people's work is bound up in their creation.
Right. What else have we been watching?
Been watching a lot of Walton Goggins.
Yeah.
That's something that I think we're not wrestling with, right? Like, that's just the thing, right?
Oh, no, at this point, we think our feelings about him are uncomplicated. And
Walton, very, very clear.
If you're listening, keep it uncomplicated. We don't want to have mixed feelings about.
Please do the right thing. Don't make me change. Don't make me have to put you in that conversation. Please
take down our Walton Goggins posters that we've ordered. Right. The Walton Goggins thing. I mean, I think for a while he's been like the best thing about a lot of projects, and he's always been a captivating presence. But it was very interesting this last Sunday to see him be great on White Lotus and then stick around and see him be great on the Righteous Gemstones. And it just kind of feels like if you're watching White Lotus going, this is great, Walton Goggins, he's subtle, he's tortured, he's contained, I love this version of him, he's a good actor. And then you start off the episode of Righteous Gemstones and he's standing there in a spotlight saying, Gemstones roll call! And it's like, I was like, oh, there it is. There's that little pop that he gets. Like the way he spends every little syllable of his role as Baby Billy on Righteous Gemstones is so fucking funny. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm proud that he's from my hometown. He's a Birmingham, Alabama boy.
Oh, cool.
And again, he feels Birmingham to me. Like, I know a lot of guys who have a little bit of that charming, good old boy quality, but they're also smart, funny weirdos, and he's got that. If you've ever met those kind of quirky, eccentric Southern people, I might be one. But I mean, if you've ever met those sort of people, like there's a lot of them. There's a lot of us down there. And I think you can kind of feel it in the way that he embraces the weirdness of his role as Baby Billy, like the look and the style of that character, but also, the sort of stuff he's doing on White Lotus. I mean, Ronald, talk to me a little bit about the 1-2 punch. And I guess we also have to mention his scene partner this week on the White Lotus was Sam Rockwell. That was a great surprise. That show pulls out a big casting surprise, it seems like just about every year. And it was such a neat thing when an actor who is going to really do something interesting shows up and they give him this incredibly wild monologue. And, he's only in this one scene so far. And it's this I mean, I don't know, incredible piece of writing and acting.
And all Walton's,
what do you have to say, Ronald?
all Walton's really doing is like a lot of face acting, and says a couple words along the way. But man, like
it's really good listening.
Yeah, really good listening. He is us. He is the audience for this scene.
Sure.
Wait. Is he us or is he them? Fucking us, or is he
themselves?
Am I her, or I'm her fucking me, or whatever it was he said about that? That's just.
Yeah, man. Like my love for Walton started with a terroristic villain called Boyd Crowder in the show Justified. Fucking incredible. I know that people talk about all the stuff he did now. Do yourself a favor. All the things you've seen in these shows, he's done in Justified. He's been this like sadistic, snarky, charming.
Oh man,
all this
you
stuff, man.
You can go back also like Sons of Anarchy,
Shane Van Drell,
or go back to The Shield. I mean, that's really the start of it all.
Shield, hell yeah, man.
Or was it Shane Vendrell? I said Vandrell. It's Vendrell.
It's Vendrell. Yeah.
Like a truly tragic character,
dude.
on that show.
Yes,
just he has the range, man. Like it's funny. Walton does this thing where like you see him, you're familiar with him, you know his work, and then he does something totally different in the thing that you're watching. It is really interesting. Like Baby Billy is like this. Is not like any of the characters that he's ever played in the Danny world. Like it's very different. It's like this. He's so obnoxious in it, but like, I think this is when he's honed in the heart more. Like you like him, like I'm rooting for Baby Billy. I want Baby Billy's Bible Bonkers to work. I want him to work out his relationship with his girl. I want him to.
Yeah, he's horrible, but like he's on the outside of everything, so you want him to win. You know, it's like because the other side, the inside is even worse. It's like they're even worse than him. You know, so it's like. Let him win. Something work for him, please, dear God.
Oh my God. Baby Billy's Bible Bonkers is one of the funniest running gags on any show ever. Like the way that built through the season, and we finally got to see it, and the swarm of locusts, that comes in.
And the fact it's on the streaming service, it's on their like streaming service now. Because he
I'm a star. They can't do the show without me. Oh God.
You got somewhere to be.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Well, I love when it first cuts back to them in the dressing room and before that crazy nude scene, but where he's sitting there and he says, y'all got to figure out those jetpacks. Y'all look like rank amateurs. And they're like, we are amateurs. We've never flown jetpacks before. I also loved it. Sidebar to that. I loved Danny McBride's running gag this week of like being jealous of his son viewing his dad as a mentor and like trying to get in there. That was so funny. Just like the silliness of him, like watching them do the little fist bump and then the explosion hands, and he's like, and they chuckle, and he's like, well, that's not funny. I don't see the humor in that.
We talked about this like when the last season ended, like because that was felt like a perfect ending. It's like it's going to go on another season,
right?
But there's the shows that you're just going to miss so much when they're not around. Mm-hmm. And Gemstones is absolutely one of those shows. Like there's such a joy in watching that show every Sunday that just like something you genuinely look forward to, because there's no question I will find it extremely inappropriate and so funny.
Something's going to make you laugh. Something's going to make you laugh for sure.
It's turned up all the way. Like, whether it's like Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, like everything that they've done in this run on HBO with, the shows, they're just so fucking funny. Mm-hmm. Like laugh out loud funny. Like we were talking at the top of the show, I don't even before we were recording, like the lines from this episode beyond what you've already mentioned. Mm-hmm. There's like 5 more that are just hilarious. I mean, even in the pilot of this, or the first episode of this season, which is not a funny episode per se, there's still like some pretty fucking funny lines in that.
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to mention, related to that first episode, Steve, you were just talking about the strengths of this show. This show also has that ability to totally surprise you. Like, you do sit down knowing you're going to laugh and you're going to see these great characters, but you also sit down going, well, I don't really know exactly what I'm going to get. And that first episode of the season was incredible. I mean, production value wise, writing wise, and then who shows up in it. I guess we can say it's out. But Bradley Cooper. I mean, you for a second you're like, is that Bradley Cooper? It sounds like him. It kind of looks like. Oh shit, it's Bradley. Oh yeah, they could get Bradley Cooper. Right. At this point, they could get anybody. I don't know. And it was such a good performance, and even like the way they visualized the war, it was like. It fit in with the aesthetic of the show, and that there was a little bit of dark comedy to the way things were depicted.
Right, exactly.
Flying through the air and stuff. But it was also done with real, like, cinematic sense of, like, this is a pretty cool, well shot, well.
Danny directed that episode.
I know.
Too.
It was. I was very impressed with the fact that he directed. I thought sure that was a David Gordon Green or a Jody Hill direction. Those are the more established directors who work on the show. I was blown away that was him. But it makes sense in a way that it would be like, final season, it's his show. He's not in this episode.
Yep.
Probably pretty easy for him to, and also the production time. It's the first episode. I bet it gave him a chance to really put together a really special show.
For sure.
But what a great episode. You don't need an explanation for why the Gemstones are the way they are, but that little origin story was such a funny, weird, unsettling, kind of poignant story that explains to you this idea of, okay, these guys are kind of hucksters and con men and money grubbers, but they're also sort of sincere about the Lord. It's really interesting.
It was great.
Like the way the way Bradley Cooper was able to play that too. It's in a way that was funny and relatable, but also he's a scoundrel. But you sense that he kind of wants to give a speech. Like he has that moment where he doesn't get to give a speech to the one guy because he dies, and then the next guy dies before he can say something too. And when he finally gets a chance to say something, and it helps people. I don't know. It's like it's incredibly silly, and there was something very satirical about how dark that is. That he's impersonating a man of God, and he gets to live. But there's also something really that was sincere, I feel like, about showing this guy not quite a spiritual conversion, but a guy who's like, oh wait, I have a thing I can do. People actually are comforted by my words. I don't know. Interesting show.
The also for that, I don't know if you guys are still watching it, but Walton's also voices Cecil on Invincible, which just wrapped its third season too.
Yeah, he does.
And he's got a couple of really great. That character in this season has a couple of really great episodes. Like, kind of has a bottle episode about Cecil, which is Walton's character. Mm-hmm. But there's some really great voice performance from him this year. I mean, that show is incredible too. Like, that's another one that I just like. It goes by so quickly, and I'm just like, oh my god, the season's over already, and it's going to be another year change until the next season's out.
Hopefully,
thankfully they're making those shows faster now. Yeah. So,
no, I haven't watched the new one yet, but my son loves that show, and he said he said the third season's on par with the first. That the second season was good, but not quite there.
I totally agree with him. He's 100% right. Yeah, no, this season ends really strong, and the last
he's read all the comics,
awesome.
The whole run of the comics. So.
That's cool. That's cool.
I gotta check out the season. I watched the first half. I need to watch the second half.
Well, they did that thing where they like broke it into half, like they broke it up, So it's like, but that's fine. I mean, it's just a great show. But he's great in it. Stephen Yeun's great in it. I mean, everybody's really good, but those two in particular, they have some really great character moments this season. Walton, keep it up,
cast
man.
Overall, I would say
that
show too. Great voice cast. And also he's got Fallout, so that's
he's just rocking it, man. He's rocking and rolling. He's also got a sunglasses line.
Really?
He's also got a liquor line. I mean,
of course he does.
Walton's. I want to tell you guys. I saw this before and like chuckled and talking about his moment. I don't know if he's seizing it by having this merchandise, but the glasses, the sunglasses, they're called Walton Goggins goggle glasses.
Oh,
that's the brand name, which clearly you would call it that. But they sell five glasses.
I love that it should be Walton Goggles, right? And it's just the obvious thing that he's not doing.
Right, he's going to not do that. He's got to have three other words. But But I wanted to just tell you, they sell 3 products, right? 3 sunglasses. And they're goggles. They're like ski visor goggle glasses. I wanted to tell you the names of those goggles real quick.
Oh, please do. Please do.
So the first one is called La Tortuga. The second one is Cumulonimbus.
Cumulonimbus, yes, like a cloud.
Mama Skillet. Lemoncello. And the last one's just called Blue. And you would guess it's a blue pair of goggles, and you'd be right.
What?
But they're great. They're great. And then he has an alcohol line, a liquor line called Mulholland Spirits that I've seen ads for. And yeah, I hope he does well on both of those because I appreciate him.
Yeah, man.
His glasses are a little too expensive for my budget, but get it. That's all I'm saying. Somebody will buy them, I'm sure.
You don't have those Goggins dollars. You just got.
I don't got the Goggins dollars for the goggles. The Goggins goggle glasses. One day, that's what I'm working hard for, John. This work at night while we're doing this is it's just so I can get a pair of the blue ones. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, these are like the Bret Harts.
Yes, yes. You wear these on a ski slope and or any other time you need glasses. The next podcast, I'm going to see Ronald has a pair of them.
Right. Like, I'm going to put somebody in a sharpshooter.
I've also heard that he had I never watched this show, but he had a sitcom with
oh my God, when his wife died.
Yeah, Rob Corddry and huge comedic cast that I heard was great, and I never got around to it.
I need you to do me a favor. Watch that. I forgot that was him in it.
Yeah, he's like the star of it.
Because he's so you got to understand, like, he's so different in that show.
Yeah.
So he's like this real softy, super sensitive dude that's trying to get back out in the dating world.
Right.
Oh my God, I forgot that was him.
It's always been on my list as I got to get around to this comedy mainly because it's him. Rob Corddry's in it.
They canceled that way too fast.
How many was it? Was it 1 season or 2?
I think it's 2.
2, okay. Yeah, Omar Benson Miller's in it. Yeah, it's a cool cast.
Yeah, that you're gonna make me want to rewatch that show.
Michaela Watkins, she's hilarious. But yeah, he's a good guy. We're a fan. We'll have him on the pod one day, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, if he's listening.
What else have you guys watched? Anything? I'm excited to see Mickey 17 tomorrow. I know it comes home tomorrow, so I'll probably watch it this weekend.
What? It's tomorrow? Tomorrow?
Yeah, you sent it to us, right? Or no, is it
soon.
Tuesday? No, tomorrow or next Tuesday?
I think.
Or maybe you're right. Maybe it's not tomorrow. I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, you are.
Maybe it's the 25th.
It and the day the Earth blew up, the Warner Brothers cartoon are coming out on home very quickly. Yeah, that one I got to check out too. Feels kind of a bummer to me, just because I would like to think those, but both have at least decent word of mouth, and you'd like to think they would have a little bit more of a chance to milk the.
Yeah.
Well, also the Soderbergh movie that came out last week, Black Bag, is apparently awesome and completely bombed, and it'll be probably a week or two until it's on.
Damn.
I wanted to see it, and I wanted to see the Warner Brothers cartoon in the theater because I thought both of those were movies. It's like, oh, you don't see this type of thing in theaters. You don't see hand-drawn, silly animation. You see like epic animation and big, tentpole animation, but you don't see silly comedy animation that much.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see it to support it. It apparently has done well enough to get the talk going that same distributor or studio might buy the shelved Acme movie. So it hasn't been a flop, but the plan, I mean, it's already been announced. Like a few days back, it was announced that it was coming home.
Wow.
So same with Mickey 17, and you assume with Black Bag too. But these are all movies that have gotten decent reviews and are in theaters, and we want these, particularly those kind of mid-budget ones. Mickey 17 is pretty expensive, but
that's a big one.
The Black Bag and the Warner Brothers animation, I mean, those are the kind of movies you just don't see in theaters that often anymore. The studios don't put a lot of heft behind them, and the fact that they're not doing gangbusters means they'll probably continue to not put that much heft behind them. I feel like I'm part of the problem, I guess, is what I'm saying, because I didn't make it out to see either one of those movies in the last week. So.
Oh, dang.
So it's my fault.
It's hard. It is hard sometimes. Like,
you're right. It's the 25th. Sorry. Like it's Tuesday. Well, I guess I have to wait longer. Thanks for bursting that bubble, Ronald.
I'm sorry.
The only thing I'll mention is a movie I saw only because I spent 2 hours and 8 minutes or whatever watching this movie. I have to mention that I saw The Electric State on Netflix.
Thoughts?
And well, before when I was talking about Howard the Duck being kind of like interesting because it's sort of dated and it's sort of its time, and I said it'd be there's another movie I've seen that would be more interesting if it were kind of bad and campy. I think that The Electric State, it's so like, it's efficient. It's the effects are kind of decent but not great. The world building is interesting. The script is tight enough. The performances are okay, but it's like it's so uninteresting. Like it would be much more interesting if it were worse. Like if it were campy and weird. That this movie, this idea of these like the way the story. I won't say too much about the story in case anyone wants to watch it. But like the world building. In fact, I will pull up a image from the graphic novel that it's based on. Just because I think that's an interesting thing. Where is it? Like the graphic novel that it's based on is really more like a storybook with like weird paintings and little bits of story in it, like sort of like the image you see behind me here. If you're looking at your screen here, let's see maybe a little more.
I want to see it. I got to check it out still.
So it's like it's a cool world, but in the movie they've made it much more family friendly and took away kind of the mystery and the mystique of the illustrations and made it much more, like it feels very much like a middling kind of Marvel movie in terms of its style, and maybe that's no surprise with it being directed by the Russo brothers. It's not bad. It's just kind of drab. It does have moments and things in it that are kind of interesting and cool that made me wish for a more dynamic version of this, or maybe more of a visual style or something. But the problem is not that it sucks. The problem is that you'll almost, for me, it felt like a little bit of a flat line. Like it doesn't quite have the atmosphere and the interest of the illustrations that the movie's based on, but it does have a lot of details there. And again, the story that it's telling, the backdrop, the world is kind of interesting, and you feel like that part is, it's written by is it Marcus and McFeely? Yeah. So it's the same people that are, have worked on all the Marvel movies with the Russo brothers. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be efficient and every bit as competent as it is. It just feels like, a great example would be like Chris Pratt is just kind of there in this. Like he doesn't really have anything to play to or against. It's not really him. It's not really funny like one of his guys. It's a little bit sketched in, like, oh, this is kind of like Star-Lord, but not really, or this is somewhere between Star-Lord and the guy from Jurassic World. It just doesn't have much pop. Millie Bobby Brown is a little wooden in this. She's not bad. She's just kind of okay. It's just, it has so many things about it that feel like, okay, this movie needed some more, I'm going to use a technical term, Ronald. Pizzazz.
We don't normally go so technical in this podcast. There's a time and a place, and it's right now.
I think people know they can go look up a word if they're not sure about it, and so I'm just going to say, if you don't know about pizzazz, look it up, find out about pizzazz. But this movie could have been jazzed up, they might say. But I could totally imagine if when my son was younger, if when he was like 8 or 9, and we'd seen this movie together, I feel like we would have enjoyed it enough. It's just a little bit uninspiring going, oh yeah, these are the guys who are going to be doing the next Avengers movies. And it made me to think like, oh yeah, I don't know that the Russo brothers, like as stylistically diverse as they were when they were like directing episodes of Community, and even I think their MCU stuff is like some of the strongest stuff from a certain point of view. Yeah. There's something kind of weird about their inability to get me going with any of their Community or Marvel material. Like, the Gray Man didn't really knock me out. Cherry was kind of kind of a nothing. And this was, again, kind of like those. It was like, oh, all right.
It's so weird. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in watching this. Like, I like the trailer. I've heard nothing but consistent with what you're describing. But it's clear, like, it seems like it's got that attempt to be like kind of Amblin-esque, like, the Ready Player One vibe, or like, just that when you mentioned the family friendliness of it all. But I could see that hurting a movie that maybe, because I actually did start it. I just like every intention to try to watch it before this episode, and I never got through it. I didn't get past like the first 10 minutes, not because of I didn't like it, just got distracted. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to watching it. I have a feeling like I'm going to come out of it being like the one person that really liked it. Probably. There's a high chance of this, possibly. I don't know.
Well, no, I found it watchable. Like I kept being surprised, maybe at like, oh, I'm not like going and getting so bored I'm turning this off, which happens to me with so many things where I could barely make it through.
Okay.
I feel like it does get a little long, but as far as like the way that it's made and the storytelling, it's not like it's like I said, it's not like it's incompetent. That's not the problem. It's just there's something. I mean, really, I'll be interested to hear your take to see if you know what I mean. That there's just something. It feels a little something with the characters aren't quite there, or maybe it's a Chris Pratt problem. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. So,
cool.
Anything else?
Netflix. Nah, man, just, it's all TV for me this past week. Like, and we talked about it's basically dominated by Walton Goggins, but
yeah.
Kept up on the Pitt. Pitt's great. Winding up the first season here. Got a couple episodes left. Well, I'm up to date, but the season's got a few episodes left. Incredible show. I think I was telling my friends when I was like catching, I was like, it's one of the most affecting shows I feel like I've watched in a long time. Like, I'm a very emotional person, and like when I watch movies, like it's very easy for me to connect with it if it's doing something good with the characters, and it can get me emotionally. Mm-hmm. But I think that the expediency and the efficiency at which this show goes from like these little mini stories that you experience like with patients coming through an ER, not to mention the stories that our leads and our characters and our doctors and the nurses that you're kind of tracking with them over the show. It's just it's really, really just impressive, man. Like it's one of the more wow shows for me this year or recently. It just every episode there's like at least a moment or two that just like out of nowhere just knocks me out. Like I'm just like, well, I'm expecting it now, but I didn't expect it there, and there it went.
Yeah.
And it's like very successful in that way.
Like I was telling you, man, when I texted you, I know. That show's been making me cry almost every episode toward the end. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening?
It's the efficiency that I'm getting at is like the way that they're able to deal with so many different like patients and cases and the types of things and the human element of the person that they're speaking with, it's like people's experiences. The sampling is so great because of how quickly they're able to do these things in this episode. It's in real time, it's over the course of a shift. So like there's a high probability that as a viewer, you're going to cross someone's experience that you can relate to, and whether it's a loved one, an older loved one, a younger loved one, somebody with an addiction problem that a lot of us have crossed in our lives. It's like, there's a high chance that like in one episode, they've had conversations with people that are going through something that you probably have touched, that's touched your life in 3 to 4 ways. You know what I mean? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like the perspective thing you're talking about is really cool because they'll have a conflict that's happening, and then 3 people are tackling the same thing, talking at the same time, have totally different ideas about it.
Right.
And then you're like, I feel like this angry person right here. I feel like her. I'd have did what she did. I'd have confronted this person the way she did.
Right.
You're like, and then somebody can be like, I don't know if I would have done that. I'm feeling like I'd be a little more professional like this doctor would have.
Right.
It's so cool. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It feels like, rather than a procedural, it feels like kind of a study on how well people work together in these environments or don't work together.
Right.
That's a little more interesting because I'm used to the procedural. It's like this person is fainting. What? Let's figure that out. That's in there too. You know, let's figure out what's going on. But it's more about the interpersonal relationships, and then things pay off in the weirdest way. You think that like you'll see somebody in the background, like even the security guard. You know what really made me feel good? So random when the security guard after the lady got punched.
Yep.
He was like, I'm gonna fucking find
Where's he at? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's just like that little stuff. Like when it's like when we worked at Apple, and there were like these little exchanges that we've had where you're like, oh, this person has my back. Like, we're like a family in a way. It's like that stuff really, you forget sometimes. You spend most of your life working.
Yeah, that's true.
And at least the first couple decades, and you're around these people, you get to know them, and even if you don't love everything they do, there's like this synergy that happens that just works really well. And this show just does shows really makes me think about work a lot, like just how important good people are in a work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, great show, man. Just what a great show.
Be prepared to unravel a little bit.
yeah, just prepare yourself. Yeah. And again, there's I think 2 or 3 episodes left of the season, or maybe 2 episodes left, and I feel like what they've hinted at is going to be pretty crazy. You're not caught up yet, right?
No, I have two episodes.
Cool.
There's no plane engine gonna crash into it.
I'm not gonna say a word. I'm not gonna say anything. I don't want to spoil.
Okay, I'm just wondering because I think about Grey's Anatomy, how Grey's Anatomy started to get real nuts.
I don't think we're to that point. No. But they're in their first season.
Yeah.
That's it for me, man. That's it. Again, maybe check something out over the weekend. Sydney wants to go see Snow White, so maybe take her to see that.
Okay, yeah.
That's it.
Cool.
Yeah, I did want to mention. I mentioned the graphic novel with the great paintings that I was saying are so evocative of the Electric State. That the movie almost captures some of that stuff, and I didn't mention who did the graphic novel. I just wanted to say it's Simon Stalenhag or Stalenhag, and it's like I said, it's like a picture book with little paragraphs of narration. So it's a very, mosaic kind of hodgepodge of images and stuff, and it's very lonely and eerie. And I think the movie, I've seen where the themes are intact, and some people are happy that the theme of the way we interact with technology is made more family friendly because the Russos wanted it to be applicable to kids, to young people. But I think that's like the main element of the tone that gets brought along. The book is much spookier than the movie. So
cool.
Just wanted to say the name Stalenhag.
Stalenhag.
Or I should say I wanted to have a chance to mispronounce the name. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it right. Stalenhag.
Cool. All right, movieschmovie.com. It's the website. You can go there to choose how you want to experience this podcast. You can listen on the site. You can subscribe to the pod in the platform of your choice. Also, youtube.com/Movie Schmovie Podcast. If you want the video option, you can also just listen to audio there. If you'd like to just sit on YouTube, like I do sometimes at work, and just let things play as I'm working without actually looking at them. But it's worth checking out. It's worth looking, I'm saying, though. I would say peek over once in a while if you don't mind.
Put the volume down and then peek over every now and then.
Just real quick. But yeah, if you could do anything to subscribe, review, rate, just let us know you're listening. We would really appreciate it. Back next week. Well, we'll be back soon with a new episode of the podcast. Again, my required viewing pick was they look like human. Well, no, they look like humans.
Look like people.
People, yeah. I always get the name wrong. They look like people on all the free services. But check it out on Freebie. Let's watch it with us. Yeah, but I guess we should. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to say, John. We're going to have a week off, so it'll be coming out in 2 weeks. So stick with us, but we'll have a new episode in 2 weeks. Till we see you then. But thank you so much for listening, and as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.